and also the World Trade Center towers ordered by the Pope. And we're going to talk about that because, all these things just don't take place. It was Theodore Roosevelt who said, if anything happens in politics, you can bet it was planned. Because nothing just happens, out of the blue, instantaneous. It's all planned. It's all well planned to the T. And so we're going to get into that tonight. And he's going to come on in about 10 minutes after the 8:30 break. Until then, I just want to talk a little bit about the Islam network within the United States. 1.3 billion people involved with Islam, and only 20% of these Arabs are in Iran and Iraq. So think about that. I mean, most of the bulk of the world's Muslims are not in Iran and Iraq. They're all over the world in different countries right now. They're taking over Africa. They're killing Christians. They're crucifying them on crosses. They're burning them. They're murdering them. They're raping them. They're beating them up. And, it's been one horror after the next in Africa with the Muslims invading their country. And this is coming worldwide. I mean, there's many people that believe that the white horse in the first seal, or the releasing of the white horse, is terrorism, and we know that. And Islam is a big bulk of that. So, that's one way of looking at the white horse being unleashed. Of course, some people also believe that is domestic, because the rider of the horse has a bow but no arrows. And so it's more or less domestic policy that begins to shape the world and begins to shape and bring about the tribulation period, and definitely lean towards that one as well, the interpretation of the white horse, because he has a bow but he doesn't have arrows. And so it's not a war horse. The red horse, the red rider, he's a war horse. But the white one, we're looking at probably more of some kind of political diplomacy that's beginning to shape up for the other horses to come, for the other judgments to come, shaping up the whole tribulation period. And you might see that as in being through Javier Solana. And we talked about that 2 weeks ago. Constance Cumby on the show talked about Javier Solana and his role in the UN. And a lot of people believe he's the Antichrist. And, I haven't hung my hat on that one. But he's definitely a candidate. He's the one out there. He's writing these policies. He's writing these treaties. The Oslo, probably the one coming up, the peace treaty that's coming up to settle the conflicts in the Middle East. And the Antichrist confirms the treaty. He doesn't necessarily write it. And so I look at Javier Solana as, although he is a definite candidate, he's also just a pawn of the Vatican's. And that says right in the code, he's a pawn, and he's straight from Rome. And of course, there's also a lot of things in this code where he's Antichrist, and we know he is. I mean, all these beasts are Antichrist, and I've said 2005 is the year of beasts because there's just so many of them. And, they're going to take a week probably with the Pope's funeral. And what's interesting is if, I've been reading some of the stuff from the Sananda and Maitreya and Germain crowd, and they're telling their followers that they're coming before April 15th, and if they owe the IRS money, not to send it in. And so I put that on my blogger, I smell an audit coming, these little followers of Sananda, and Sananda, of course, being a lookalike, not even a lookalike, but the person that the churches believe is Jesus Christ, is Yahushua, because, Michelangelo painted a portrait of Sananda, and the church adopted that to become Jesus Christ, like the original, the official photo of Jesus Christ, even though they didn't even know what he looked like back then, and many of them still don't today. And everyone's adopted that picture of Sananda as being Jesus. And so when he comes, I always said he would be the worst one to come. He would deceive the most people because he looks just like him. And some of the things they do, and you can't even explain it, because although Sananda looks identical like Jesus Christ, the pictures people have on their church bulletins, they have his picture in their churches, in their homes, on their bookmarks for their Bibles, it's Germain that has the holes in his hands. So you have the look-alike on the left side that looks exactly like this Jesus the church has been conditioned to believe what he looks like. And then you have Germain, who doesn't necessarily look like the pictures we've seen of Jesus, but then he has the holes in his hands. And then off to the right somewhere, you've got Benjamin Krem's main man, the hatchet man, Maitreya himself, who's going to come and shock the world with his savagery. And you got to wonder, is this the time they're stating they'll come before April 15th. We'll see. I'm not going to hold my breath. They say this every year, and at least 2 or 3 times a year. But we know that false Christs are coming. The Lord warned us in Matthew 24 that false Christs were coming in His name, come claiming, saying I am. They would claim that they are I am, the name, and that's exactly what Shenandoah says. He calls himself Emmanuel, and I am. Those are the names he uses. And so it's going to be interesting. Kind of all rushes into the timetable, and you got to wonder with the changing of Passover this year, everybody finding an extra month, and the Talmudics claiming that Passover is April 24th, and, whatever, the Torah-believing Jews, of course, celebrated Passover last week. And so there's a big discrepancy this year between the Talmudic and the Torah Jews on when the dates are for the festivals. And, it's got a lot of eyebrows raising because, in Daniel it says that, the last days the times would be changed, and it would be there to benefit the beast, and he would change the times and the laws and the seasons, and, he's working behind the scenes. He always is, and, I'm still hanging my hat on the President of the United States as being the beast, one of them at least, false prophet or Antichrist is an argument for either one. I can see the arguments for either one. So, one of them definitely. So many prophecy gurus today get on TV and pay money to tell you that the United States is not mentioned in prophecy. And then you can buy the video for $29.99, where they can reiterate it again. Why the United States is not in prophecy, and it's just a bunch of crap. It's a bunch of crap, folks. Don't listen to it. The most dominant nation ever on the world scene, and we're not mentioned? Give me a break. Give me a break. We're mentioned. We're all over the place. You can go to my website at SherryShriner.com. I have many articles on the United States in prophecy. Last day's events. I've I think I have 42 articles now that I've written over the last 2 years, and these articles take time, and I just don't sit down and write something and wait until I feel led by the Lord to do so. I don't do anything without Him. I told you last week, even during the show, that the Lord had led me into studying Islam and Zionism, just trying to get it out there more, and I have a website going up on the New World Order and Zionism, but I just haven't gotten to it yet because, I've had these other issues going up on the Talmud and the Islam lies. And for the one on the Zionism, most people just don't understand the New World Order's involvement with Zionism, what it is. They rally around the flag of Christian Zionism, which is support Israel, and that's all nice and patriotic. But when you talk Zionism, all the government hears is, you're supporting Zionism, our Zionism, and that's the New World Order Zionism, and they're all Satan freaks, and so they've got the green light to pretty much do anything they want out there to destroy Israel. And like I've said, the Bible-believing Jews in Israel today do not support Zionism, because political Zionism in Israel is what's destroying Israel. Their dictator, Sharon Peres, I think it's Perez or Sharon, their dictator is pretty much doing what he wants there as much as our own here, in the form of our own president is doing what he wants here. They're both pulling the agendas of the New World Order. And, of course, the Pope, the Vatican, needs that Zionism, political Zionism in Jerusalem, because they want to rebuild Solomon's Temple. It's been their plan from day one to rebuild Solomon's Temple in Jerusalem, have control of it themselves, so the Antichrist can rule from Jerusalem. And most people don't know this, and I stumbled on this a couple months ago, and the fact that early in 1993, that Jerusalem had signed over the Temple Mount land to the Vatican. And maybe Eric will talk about that tonight. I don't have that information directly in front of me right now, but it just came to my mind how they've already signed over the land over there to the Vatican. And so the Vatican is in full control of the Temple Mount area in Jerusalem. Everything else is just window dressing